Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine.
So, good noon to all the candidates and to the expert. So, this is the session two, and the session two it will be taken by Professor Rajiv Srivastav. So, Professor Rajiv Srivastav is currently working as a professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, head of Center for Computing and Information Services, and Dean, Resource and Alumni Affairs in Indian Institute of Technology, IIT, BSU, Varanasi. He also has served as head of Department of Computer Science and Engineering during August 2017 to December 2020. He holds the degree of BE, ME, and PhD, all in computer science and engineering. He has around 23 years of teaching and research experience, and he is a fellow of Institution of Engineers, FIE, Institution of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineers, FIE-TE. He is senior member of IEEE USA and member of ACM USA. He has published around 77 research publications in reputed international journals, 75 research papers in conferences, 4 research papers, research reference books, and 16 book chapters. He has produced 13 PhD students, and 7 PhD students are currently pursuing their research work under him. He serves as expert member on different panels of NBA, UGC, UPSC, DRDO, UPPSC, and other reputed institute and universities of Government of India. He is on the reviewer panel of many international journals and conferences. He is a recipient of Research Publication Awards by IIT BHU Global Alumni Association in 2010 and 2014 respectively. His biography was listed in Marquis Who is Who in Science and Engineering USA, 11th edition 2011-12, and 2000 Outstanding Intellectuals of the 21st Century 2011 by International Biographical Centre, IBC, Cambridge, England. His research interests lies in the areas of image and video processing, computer vision, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and computational bioinformatics. So today's his lecture will be on the topic of applications of artificial intelligence and machine learning and soft computing in computer vision. Sir, we invite you for the address of this session on this topic. Please, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Vijayan, for introducing me and giving an opportunity to share my brief ideas. Basically, I would like to share option. Share option is enabled.
Sir, I am adding you as co-host.
Yeah.
सर आप प्रेजेंट कर दीजिए आ जाएगा.
जी. क्या फिर से ज्वाइन करना पड़ेगा क्या? ऑप्शन तो दिखाई नहीं दे रहा है.
सर स्क्रीन प्रेजेंट करने का नहीं आ रहा है ऑप्शन.
आई एम गोइंग टू थ्री डॉट्स एंड अच्छा एक बार एक मिनट थोड़ा वेट करिए. इंटायर स्क्रीन को मैं प्रेजेंट कर देता हूँ.
एंटर कर लीजिए
हो
सर,
गया हो
उससे आ
गया.
जाएगा.
ठीक. या विंडो कर देंगे. लेट मी सी. यस. My slides are visible?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Now it is coming.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Vijayan. My today's topic is AI machine learning applications for computer vision and IoT. Basically, this is a some kind of informative lecture or talk, you can say, that discusses about the various possible applications of artificial intelligence and machine learning applied to computer vision applications as well as IoT. So I will not be going into deeper into mathematics and other things. Rather, I would like to introduce the field of AI, machine learning, and possible applications in computer vision, wherein all the applications are basically based on optimization technique, whether it is a problem of restoration, enhancement, classification, regression, everywhere some optimization is needed, whether it is the error minimization problem, whether it's a likelihood maximization problem, or whether it is a feature selection problem where we have to maximize the fitness function or we have to minimize. So optimization is the core behind every engineering applications, and computer vision is also one of them where optimization techniques are heavily used. So here I will be discussing the possible application areas where those techniques can be applied and can be useful. Once you are aware about the various methodologies and techniques that has to be applied, it becomes very much easier for us to formulate new problem, devise new algorithm to solve a particular problem. That is the basic requirement for any research contribution. So here I will start from AI. AI, as you know, AI is a area of research which is combination of technology that enable machines to act with higher level of intelligence and emulate them the human capabilities of sense, comprehend, and act. Basically, if we see refer to this very basic diagram of AI components, which derives all the possible areas. Here there are three components: sense, comprehend, and act. If we see the sense part, then here the analogous technological field that can be easily associated, maybe your computer vision, audio processing, and many others. Whenever we come toward the comprehend, means after sensing some data, it has to be comprehended, it has to be understood. Then we use in some form natural language processing, AI, knowledge representation, etc. And when it comes to act, it comes the uh, comes to act, how to act on that particular data or what you want to derive from that particular data. Then here we can use the various AI techniques, optimization techniques, and you can say machine learning techniques to derive information from that particular data. So here machine learning expert systems are applied. So here basically these are the three components behind which these applications are oriented, and there are many possible application areas of AI. So if we
राजीव सर
हाँ
स्लाइड्स नहीं चल रही है वो देख
लाइट नहीं
लीजिए
चल रही है, अच्छा
नहीं
फिर से
चेंज नहीं हो रही
फिर से मैं चेंज
यस
हुआ.
नाउ इट इज कमिंग यस इट इज ओके सर नाउ
Okay, it's okay.
यस इट इज ओके नाउ
Okay, okay. So here I would like to derive the various applications from various societal applications. So many societal applications of the any technology basically, or specifically if I am saying the AI vision and IoT may be found in the area of healthcare, education, security and surveillance, agriculture, smart mobility and transportation, smart cities and infrastructure. Means any technology revolves, or any technology that leads to the development of some product, leads to the development of new ideas, innovations, and research. They are oriented, or there is some goal. There is some goal. Means that technology must serve to the humanity for solving some problem. That's why whenever as a we see at the national level or international level, global level, as a policy maker, we would like to, as a lay person, we would like to solve the problems related with many areas, and some of these are here listed. It may be related to healthcare, security, surveillance, agriculture, smart mobility, smart cities, infrastructure, education, etc. And these are some possible application areas of computer vision applied to the various application areas. In healthcare, there may be there may be many problems, but disease prediction may be one of the problems that may be there, that where AI and computer vision technique may be applied to solve some problem. Related to security and surveillance, video surveillance, human activity recognition, and behavior analysis may be there. Image forensic, image and video forensic means tampering detection, copy move forgery detection, and analysis of image and videos for its authenticity. Those techniques work here. And if we are talking about smart cities, smart mobility, and smart autonomous system, then automatic path planning and navigation problem may come under the purview of AI and computer vision. Similarly, crowd management is another problem that is related to video surveillance and many other related techniques. So I would like to just give you a basic idea of as first IoT, then computer vision, then machine learning. Then I will switch over to the various application areas where these tools and technologies can be applied. So you may be knowing the basic definition of IoT. IoT is a network of physical devices, vehicles, home appliances, and other items embedded with electronic software, sensor, actuators, connectivity, which enables these things to connect and exchange data, creating opportunities for more direct integration of the physical world into the computer-based system, resulting in efficiency improvements, economic benefits, and reduced human exertion. So now, in today's current era, we are working on the edge computing. Means we want to design a technology, a product where our product or should be able to do maximum task at the user level, at the end level, at the end device. That's why, and this is the requirement of the current era where we are living. And means it is not the case only you are running your application at the back end and you are getting the result from there and you are just working. Those applications are still there, but we have to also think of our application. We have to transform the technology. We have to transform the methodology which are capable of executing these kind of applications on resource constrained devices itself. So if I say what is the IoT background and need, so basically IoT has basic 6 components which we can think of, which we can understand. Why I am discussing it? Because we want to understand our role, where we are fit, where we can contribute in which area, because it is a completely diversified area where experts and researchers work from the various domains work. So we want to identify our areas. That's why I have just given this particular description here. The first component is your device connection and connectivity. Second one is your data collection through sensors and other devices. Third part of the any IoT system is your data transport and access. Fourth one is your data analytics. Fifth and sixth may be data value defined by actions, human value, apps, and experiences, means end user applications. And so these are the 6 components. And if you want to study these 3 components, we need to be expert in any of these areas. So we can define our interest. We can work in any of these particular areas. Basically, if you are a computer vision AI researcher, then obviously you will be interested in data analytics part. But you should also understand the other parts as well. Though you may not be deeply interested or you may not be deeply knowledgeable in those areas, but you have to understand all the components and you have to go deeper into your own area. So, for example, if you are working with device connectivity, then here it deals with IoT devices and its connectivity, embedded intelligence. So, some basic concepts to support that. If any student approach us, then what are the component subjects that are studied? So, we can design this course content accordingly. Means, for example, basics of hardware, architecture, connectivity, interfacing of devices, microprocessor and microcontroller. These are the basic knowledge that is required for device connectivity to start with, not the actual. Data collection, data sensing and collection storage. So here the knowledge of sensors and actuators, basics of multiple sensing devices, databases, storage that may be required. For communication purposes, with how the various devices communicate with each other, here we may need to understand the cloud and distributed computing concepts, computer network, wireless sensor network, ubiquitous computing, etc. Then if it comes to the data analytics part, here it deals with the big data analytics, AI and cognitive machine learning and deep learning, where these optimization techniques are heavily used for analyzing those particular data to infer some information or to infer some knowledge from the available data for taking further action. So here in this particular field, AI, computer vision, machine learning, deep learning, computer vision, NLP, information retrieval, social network analysis, all these things are interconnected, and they. When we talk about data value, means analysis to actions, APIs, and processes, action-level intelligence. Here, in this part, deals with the development of application programming interface software tools to accomplish those particular tasks. Then, when we talk about the smart applications tuned to the need, then here we talk about design of prototype and integrating hardware and software. So these are basic 6 components of any IoT device and which can be used. So here, since we are entering into the next phase of IoT revolution, which is not only the connectivity and IP addresses having each devices and communicating the data to the cloud and being analyzed and all these things. Now we are working in an era where we need to think more. Means we are entering in the next phase of IoT revolution. Means in first phase we focused on connecting devices, aggregating data, and building up big data platforms. But in this current phase, the focus is shifting to making things more intelligent through technologies like computer vision and deep learning, generating more actionable data. That's why we nowadays we do not only talk about wireless sensor network, we talk about visual sensor network. We talk about smart vehicles. We talk about object detection and recognition at the device level, at the vehicle level itself, where there must be some intelligence and some action can be taken. So here, for understanding those things, the IoT, at first we have to understand a architecture, IoT architecture and its research model. So basically, there are 3 components of any IoT system. And first one is your IoT enabling devices.
Excuse me, sir.
IoT software platform, then IoT application. And if we talk about as a computer scientist, IoT software platform, then we talk about some reference architecture. It is some kind of middleware in IoT, as we do in your distributed computing system. In the design of an IoT software platform, scalability, extensibility, and interoperability between heterogeneous devices and service-oriented architecture ensures the scalability and interoperability of heterogeneous technology.
Excuse me, sir.
हाँ जी.
सर आपकी स्लाइड्स मूव नहीं कर रही हैं.
Slides are not moving.
यस सर, अब ठीक है.
आप बताइए, मैं इसको अब मूव कर रहा है, दिख रहा है?
सर आप दिख रहा है.
ठीक है, अभी बता दिया करिए. कभी कभी स्लाइड मूव करने में डिले हो सकता है क्योंकि मैं इसको वर्बली एक्सप्लेन करता रहता हूँ, तो अगर ज़्यादा देर तक रुके तब बता दिया करिए. ठीक है. So normally in a generic service-oriented architecture, there are 4 layers which are defined here. First one is your sensing layer, next one is your network layer, third one is service layer, and fourth one is your interface layer. So here, these are the various layers which communicate with each other like a middleware architecture that we use in distributed computing systems. Similar reference architecture is also used or devised for IoT devices. And here, the sensing layer uses integrated hardware to sense things status. Network layer which connects the things together and collects the data. Service layer creates and manages services requested by users or applications. Interface layer enables the interaction method with applications or events. When you go into the product development and development of the technologies, you need to understand these components and then you have to work accordingly. So normally, this service-oriented architecture for a middleware in IoT plays a very important role, and it needs to be understood so that you can design a suitable. Means in a SOA for an IoT middleware, software between objects and applications should provide object abstraction, service management, and service composition through a secure network. And some design challenges are there which need to be addressed while designing any IoT system. It includes availability, reliability, interoperability, scalability, performance management, security and privacy, big data analytics, cloud services, smart device design. These are the definitions which are given here. And I will quickly move. Then I will coming to the computer vision part. So computer vision technology is used in everyday products, from game consoles that can recognize your gestures to cell phone cameras that can automatically set focus on your system. It is impacting many areas of our life. If we see any kind of data, there are 3 kinds of data: text, image, audio, video. If you talk about multimedia data, if you visualize, if you see that this image and video data is a huge data which is contributing towards the most of the product development, and more work has to be done in terms of technological innovation, research and development to handle this kind of data, which is normally huge or big in nature. In fact, computer vision has a long history in commercial and government use, and in past, many of these computer vision applications were limited to some closed platforms, but when combined with IP connectivity technologies, they create a new set of applications that were not possible before. So computer vision coupled with IP connectivity, advanced data analytics, and AI, they are catalysts for each other, giving rise to revolutionary leaps in IoT innovations and applications. So this is the how the current industry is working, and they are doing research and development for designing the smart products. So what is computer vision? We know it means a computer vision can actively perceive the world around them by acquiring and processing image or video and provide an understanding of the visual data and define the access to the data. So here, with this help of this diagram, you can simply see an analogy between the human being and actual computer vision. Means as a human being, we sense some image or video through our eyes, then we interpret it based on our knowledge. We try to understand it and then give our interpretation. In a similar fashion, computer vision
स्लाइड एक पीछे रह गई है.
slides are moving or not?
स्लाइड 11th पे हैं हम अभी.
Why it is not moving?
No, sir, slides are not moving.
सर अब डायग्राम आया है.
इसी बोर्ड में रहते हैं तो नेटवर्क डिले है क्या? So normally computer vision is driven by advancement in multiple fields. It is a highly interdisciplinary research field where the experts from various domains work. Maybe it's from a computer science people, maybe electrical electronics engineer people, it may be mathematician, statistician, etc. They work to even physicists also contribute heavily in this particular area for the development of the technology because it is highly mathematical oriented to design the various models. And if we see that there are basic three components of any computer vision system. First one is your image processing, another one is your image analysis, and third one is your image understanding. If we see in terms of input and output of these systems, these three individual systems of any computer vision system, then we can say the input to any image processing system is maybe an image or set of images, and output is also some kind of processed image. Processed image means here we apply some kind of image processing task, maybe enhancement, restoration, segmentation, maybe your data preparation, format conversion. All those tasks come here just to prepare the data for the next stage so that it is used by the data analysis or image analysis part. Here, second component is your image analysis. So basically, image analysis is some kind of low-level image analysis which tries to understand the image objects present into the image, and it may be attributed towards some kind of features extraction, providing the dimensions or providing some measurement about that particular data. That may be its area, perimeter, diameter, color, texture, etc. And image understanding is the last part of any computer vision system. Once you have the data, you have extracted the feature. Next, third part is your image understanding, where we apply AI, ML, or other advanced algorithm to understand that particular data, to provide some high-level description about that particular data. Data means image, means in terms of in terms of a language which a human being can easily understand. This is a simple framework of any computer vision system, just to understand it. So any computer vision system can be subdivided into two parts. First one is your left part. You can say there is vertical line. First part is your data analysis part, and next one is your image understanding part, and that is also known as conclusion from analysis. So simply we can say that we have a input image or database of input images, and some pre-processing techniques are applied. Then some features may be extracted just to guide the segmentation, or we can directly go to the segmentation part. Segmentation is basically aimed towards the extraction of region of interest which you are interested in analyzing further, means identifying the object, segregating those objects so that you just concentrate on that particular object, not on the complete background image, and for further analysis. Once segmentation is performed, then we can do feature extraction. Feature extraction is basically done for dimensionality reduction. Dimensionality reduction of the data. Here, why feature extractions are required? Because we want to analyze that particular image object or objects presented to the multiple images, and we want to derive some information. We might sometimes we may need to classify those data. Sometimes we need to predict some information. Depending upon the feature extraction plays a very important role. So here feature extraction is used for dimensionality reduction, because suppose you have 1000 of images, and if you just apply the whole process and you go to the segmentation part and you extracted the object, and if you process that particular 1000 image, and suppose each image is of size 512 into 512, the total number of data, integer data of pixel intensity that you need to process will be 1000 into 512 into 512. This is just an example, but when we deal with the videos and millions of image data, then it becomes a very huge data, and that is sometimes not advisable to use as it is. That's why rather than using the complete image data as it is, we can do what we can do. We can identify that particular image data through its some attribute or feature. So we can, those attribute features may be some kind of low level features. They may be statistical features, for example, mean, variance, skewness, etc. Because these properties are different for different objects. Similarly, sometimes we are interested in analyzing the object in terms of their shape analysis. So that may be area, perimeter, maximum bounding rectangle, or their orientation. After applying the color space conversion from RGB to YUV, or many other color spaces are available. Sometimes objects are identified or interpreted based on their textures, fine details available on the surface. Sometimes texture analysis plays a very important role. So those texture features may be extracted, or sometimes, most of the time, combination of these features are used. This is one way of extracting the feature, that is known as low level feature analysis. Another way is you can go ahead for feature extraction or dimensionality reduction by just applying simple mapping technique, feature mapping. For example, you can apply singular value decomposition, you can apply principal components analysis, etc. You can extract the eigenvectors of that particular image. They are also unique. So many multiple techniques are available. So here feature extraction plays a very important role. Once you have extracted the feature, your data analysis part is done. Then next thing is that once you have extracted the feature, how you will store them into the computer memory. Then for that particular part, you need to apply the object description and recognition part. Object description means how to describe that particular object, how to store that particular data that you have extracted into the computer memory, so that whenever required for analysis purposes, you can retrieve them directly and analyze that particular data, rather than going back again and applying all the processes up till feature extraction. So in those cases, boundary based descriptors are there, region based descriptors are there. many methodologies are there. For example, for boundary-based chain codes are there. For example, region-based descriptors are your run length encoding, project methods of projections, and many quad trees, many approaches are there to represent that particular data. So that is symbolic representation. Once you are done with the data analysis part, next part is your conclusion from analysis, means understanding part. How we will understand? So the understanding part may include classification and description, that may include the prediction part, that may include the interpretation and description of that particular part. All those AI, ML, and those techniques are applied after this feature extraction part. So this is the simple framework to understand in terms of computer vision. Similar framework can be applied to text analytics part, video, data, any kind of. Only data varies as reported in the left part.
Excuse me, sir. The slides are not moving.
Now it has moved.
No, sir. Still we are in 18th only.
18th. Why? What is the problem?
Sir, please share the entire screen and the presentation. You are sharing that PPT. That's why it is not visible, sir.
I share it regularly in the same way, but today there may be some problem. If you are saying to not to share a window rather than share complete screen.
You please share the presentation, which is means we are able to see your slides in the edit mode in the PowerPoint presentation, not the presentation actually.
Let me share it again. Now it is visible.
No, sir. Again in edit mode only. So you start the presentation and you share that presentation which you see, sir. Small window.
Yes, I know. I am doing same thing here. This is not new.
Yes, sir. I don't know what is
but,
happening.
But yes. What is the problem? Because I am going to share mode and sharing the window, not the full screen.
Yeah.
So it should come along with that particular window, because I want to also visualize the users, those who are attending here.
Yes, sir.
Let me do it again. No, that is not the correct way of sharing the full screen, because ultimately it will create an image of
Yes.
what I am saying here.
No,
Again.
sir. May I suggest, sir, something if you
Yes,
say?
please.
Yeah, sir. In presentation, you start with the presentation, and
Okay.
while creating presentation, you go to the slideshow and you make changes in the slideshow, not as a full screen, but as a small screen. So in your PPT, in your PowerPoint.
Okay. I am sharing from here.
And then you start
A
your
window.
presentation and share only presentation window.
Now it is visible or not?
Again in edit mode only, sir. We are not able to see the presentation mode.
If I convert from here in presentation mode,
Yes. No, you start from here, but then
now it is visible.
no, sir.
Why? What is the problem here?
Sir, you go here and you go for custom slideshow over here, sir. You click on custom slideshow. Yeah. Mm. No, but this will not solve
No,
problem.
this is
Just a
not serve the
moment,
purpose.
I'll
Na?
let you know.
Usually, normally when I say share the screen, it goes live. Why it is not sharing? Simply I go to this Google Meet. Let me stop here. Here I press this.
No, sir, you
Share
go to
button.
set up the slideshow, and in set up the slideshow, you go for browse by an individual. Select browse by an individual and you save. Now when you start the presentation, you minimize the window and you share only that window. So that your presentation is not full screen, but it can be minimized.
Now it is
Now
coming
you
to the
go
half
to
screen or not?
set up the slideshow.
Now
Now we are able to see the presentation, sir.
earlier you were not able to see the presentation.
No, sir. We were able to see that edit presentation only.
Oh,
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir.
thank you, thank you, thank you. So this was the basic framework where I was discussing the basic components of any computer vision system, including data analysis and image understanding part. Now I will quickly switch over to the other part. So as I was explaining to this feature extraction part and other things. So normally, if I talk about the low-level feature extraction, then normally histogram-based features, texture features, geometric or shape features, Webley-based features, Java features, many kind of low-level features may be extracted for the given object into a given database of images, depending upon the kind of application, whether you are dealing with the security application, image forensic application, whether you are dealing with the medical imaging application, agriculture related application, because each application had different property. Means the objects present into the various application domain had different properties, and they have to identify their nature and their requirement. These are some kind of low-level features that we can extract these features, the feature attributes. Normally, once we do the feature extraction part, sometimes all those features which we have extracted may not be useful. Sometimes they may be redundant, or sometimes those even non-redundant features may not be relevant. So first we concentrate on minimum redundancy part, means how to reduce the redundancy among the data so that we can further reduce the data. Because initially, suppose after applying feature extraction path, suppose I have extracted 1000 features for a given image, and out of these 1000 features, suppose all of them may not be useful, some of them may be mathematically equivalent, some of them may be redundant in some form, they may not be serving the purpose. Then how to further reduce it? Specifically, this feature selection algorithms becomes essential in those applications where number of features are very large and samples are less, in contrary to computer vision. In computer vision, we may have large number of images or video frames, and number of features may be less. Sometimes number of features may be 50 or 100. Even out of those 50 or 100 features, we may reduce those feature sets. We may select those features out of those 100 extracted features which are more relevant or which are more, you can say, having weightage, leading towards the classification, regression, or prediction part. And those features which are not relevant, they may be further reduced. But when we go to the another kind of application, for example, in bioinformatics application, where we have less number of samples. So here in computer vision application, those number of images are known as samples or observations. They are also known as samples and observations. Here, samples and observations are images or image frames. But in bioinformatics application, they are some kind of physical experimental data. And number of samples may be less, but number of features may be large. Number of features may be in terms of thousands or 10,000s or millions. So in those parts, the feature selection algorithms plays a very important role. And then we have to work on that what kind of feature selection methods may be useful for selecting those most relevant and non-redundant features. So normally feature selection algorithms can be categorized into three categories. First one is your filter-based, second one is your wrapper-based, and third one is your hybrid approach. The filter-based feature selection method use general characteristics of the data independently from the classifier for the evaluation purpose. Means here we use only the some kind of metrics just to identify the similarity of the data. Those data which are similarly, suppose the two variables which are similar, one variable, if they are similar, one variable may be dropped simply. They may be considered as a redundant. For doing so, many filter-based approaches are there. Some of them may be based on the distance criteria. I will be discussing about what are the various criteria that can be used to design those filters so that we can automatically select those features which are not redundant. Some of the metrics may be based on the minimization approach. Some of the metrics may be based on the concept of maximization approach. Suppose if you are using the distance metric approach, then in those cases, the distance between Euclidean, for example, Euclidean distance, many distances are there. For example, Bhattacharya distance, Wilcoxon distance, many distance metrics are there which are used to find out the distance between the two objects or two data. And if this distance is above some threshold, suppose 95% or 99%, we can consider that these two objects are similar. Or sometimes we may use some kind of probabilistic measure, information theoretic measure, for example, correlation parameter. In that sense, here the property of correlation parameter is that if two variables are similar, then their correlation is high. If maximum it can be 1, minimum it can be 0. 0 is highly dissimilar, 1 similar, completely similar. So in those things, here if we are working towards reducing the redundancy, then we need to maximize those parameters. Similarly, many other parameters are there. Or another technique is based on where we introduce the optimization criteria. We introduce the classifier in the feature selection itself. Means while at first we apply the filter-based technique, we select a particular feature, then we test this particular selected feature towards its classification accuracy or error. So here we select a particular feature which is associated with maximum accuracy or minimum error. Here it becomes some kind of loop back kind of system where in first step you have a filter based system and another output goes to the classifier, and classifier again re-evaluates that particular feature for its usefulness. So those features are kept into the prominent list which are associated with more accuracy or lesser error. So here, basically the general argument in favor of this scheme is to equal the bias of both the feature selection algorithm and the learning algorithm that is used later to access the goodness of the solution. And the main disadvantage associated with wrapper-based scheme is the extra computational cost that comes from calling classifier algorithm to evaluate each subset of considered features. And for optimal feature selection in wrapper-based method, the classifier error rate is minimized and a feature subset associated with minimum misclassification error is selected. So here for feature selection part, you can see a lot of contribution in research papers which use many bio-inspired algorithms, many optimization-based techniques, genetic algorithm-based techniques, where they have defined some fitness function, and that fitness function has to be iteratively minimized or maximized. Depending upon those fitness criteria, a particular feature is selected. So it is basically completely optimization-based technique, but it is also associated with extra computational cost. So it is only recommended in those applications wherever it is very much essential, or we may go for simpler, lighter version of these algorithms. And there is another approach that is known as hybrid model that use both filtering and wrapping methods for improving the performance of the selection process. Now, if we say that how we can categorize the various feature selection algorithm can be categorized or can be classified based on evaluation measure, or they may be categorized based on search organization, or they may be categorized based on the generation of successors. In these categories, many methods are reported into the literature. The evaluation measure, as I already told you, there may be some distance-based metric, some divergence-based criteria may be there, some information theoretic approach may be there, some dependence measure-based approach may be there, some accuracy-based approach may be there. So many criteria, many fitness functions have been devised into the literature. You have to understand that what kind of data you are dealing with, and what are their properties, and how much they are useful. And similarly, some methods have been defined based on the search organization, how the search optimization algorithms are applied for finding a most appropriate feature. For example, they may be exponential search, sequential, or random. Similarly, generation of successor methods, here forward selection based approach is there, backward selection, compound selection, random selection, weight-based selection. If you go to the literature, you can find n number of papers falling in one of these two categories, any of these categories, or combination of these categories. Normally, some examples of the evaluation functions used by filter-based feature selection methods include, for example, if you work with distance-based measures, so Euclidean distance is very popular. Apart from this, you can work with the Manhattan distance or Wilcoxon or Bhattacharya distance. Many parameters are there, and all of them have their own properties. Normally, when we work on a particular object, we need to concentrate here whether we are going to deal with a particular object that completely conforms with the Euclidean geometry, or it has an irregular shape. If it completely conforms with a Euclidean geometry, means some object can be defined as a square, rectangle, cube, whatever, 2D, 3D, it is there, with complete dimensions are there. Then in those cases, this distance-based metric may work completely. But when you are going to deal with a object which is having irregular shape that cannot be defined, then in those cases, some information may be best. In those cases, you may use, it is not recommended to use this L2 norm or Euclidean distance-based measure that has to be minimized. Rather than you may use LP. Or dealing with medical imaging part, and you are going to classify the various objects present to the medical images for various purposes. So normally those parts, those organs are normally irregular, having irregular shape, not completely defined as a geometrical shape. So in those cases, this information theoretic approach, they work more better. For example, entropy-based methods, information-based approach, mutual information-based approaches. Here you can change your fitness function or cost function of the optimization method accordingly. Similarly, some data dependency measures are there, correlation coefficient or minimum feature bias. So many approaches are there. You need to only think of theoretically every algorithm will work. But when you come to a particular data analysis part and application part, then you need to think of going into the property of that particular data, that which methodology is suitable, which can enhance the performance of your system, so that there is no misclassification, there is no false positive in any segmentation, etc. And many approaches are there. So in feature selection. Suppose supervised feature selection methods are there, supervised rank-based feature selection methods are there. Some of the examples are Fisher score-based methods. Here, major basis criteria, distance-based. Release F, minimum redundancy and maximum redundancy. This is very popular method. FCBF, SVM, RFC, G-flip, many approaches are there. Similarly, if you go by distance, unsupervised rank-based feature selection methods, T-test scores, Bhattacharya distance, Wilcoxon signed rank test, entropy rank feature, ROC-based, PCA, Laplacian score-based, many methods are reported into literature. If you do a literature review, even only on this feature selection part, you will find hundreds of papers reporting these particular ideas. And all of them use, by default, some of the optimization technique just to optimize their particular data, to find out their particular suitable data. This we select a feature that is maximizing the something. What is maximizing? Either minimizing the redundancy or maximizing the efficiency, maximizing the accuracy of that classifier. So those parts are there, and that has to be dealt in carefully. And this computer vision and machine learning, normally it is not an independent part, they work together, because wherever understanding part is involved, learning is also involved. So you may be knowing that machine learning can be basically classified into three categories: supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised. Now we talk about deep learning based approaches, and all of them are basically based on some kind of methodologies or approach. If you go into the mathematics of any of these methods, all of them are based on either some kind of defining cost function that has to be either minimized or maximized. For example, if we talk about supervised learning is also known as generative methods or discriminative models. Here, if you talk about, normally, if we talk about the Bayesian classifier, if we start from Naive-Bayes classifier, so that we start from Bayesian rules, some probability values are there, some conditional probability values are there, and we need to derive some likelihood. What we want to do? Likelihood, we want to find out the likelihood of happening of a particular event, most likely. Means what we want, basically we want to maximize the likelihood. So it is again a maximization problem. But if you directly go for maximization of a likelihood of any problem, that may be mathematically ill-posed. Then in those cases, regularization may be needed, and some extra regularization parameter has to be added. For example, techno regularization is very popular in image restoration problem, where we need to minimize the noise. Suppose one of the very example of the, just to understand, if you want to minimize a noise into a particular given image, so how noise can be, with what how you can define it in as a cost function. So means suppose I observed is the original image, I observed is the observed image, and I original is the original image, and I observed image can be defined as I observed is equal to I original plus eta. Eta is the noise, something that is additive nature. So how you can simply define noise? Eta is equal to I observed minus I original. Means what we want? We want to minimize the noise. How we'll cast this function? How we'll cast as a optimization function? Then simply we define that we cast it as a minimization function in L2 norm. What is then what this cost function becomes? Simply argmin I observed minus I original L2 norm, is some square distance. And simply this is the optimization function, and it becomes an iterative process. Means it has to be converged up to at some point wherever the noise is minimum. But if you go directly mathematically like this, it may not be able to preserve those details which this algorithm may be considering as a noise. For example, these fine details, edges, structures, they are also associated with high frequency components, and they are not actually noise. So sometimes if your algorithm is very blind in nature, then during the noise minimization problem, apart from minimizing that particular noise, it may also minimize or destroy those very basic structures of fine details. Then it has to be regularized. Then we say that this is mathematically ill-posed problem. Whenever it converges, it is not giving the actual. In this situation, you may get a over-blurred or over-smoothened data. But once you put a control, some constraint in this optimization problem, then it becomes a techno-regularization problem that reads as argmin I observed minus I original L2 norm plus lambda some function. What is that function? That function is a regularization function, and lambda is a regularization parameter. What is that function? That function computes the some high frequency component. Means every iteration, this function also computes some high frequency component that is to be considered as a noise, but it is also added back by some fraction. Lambda may vary from 0 to 1. That's why it is also retaining the original structure. That's how we define any minimization problem. In a similar fashion, these machine learning algorithms also are defined in a similar fashion. So here, let us take an overview of this methodologies. So this is simply a machine learning workflow for any particular problem. It completely depends upon whether you have a labeled data or unlabeled data. If you are available with a labeled data, means data with some caption, and you want to analyze it, you want to classify it, you want to predict something, then it comes under the category of supervised learning. Or if you have unlabeled data, then it comes under the category of unsupervised. And what we do actually, we at first do some kind of pre-processing of that particular data. Then we apply some feature extraction technique, and then these extracted features are divided into two parts, basically training part and testing part, by applying some statistical approaches, data partitioning techniques. And this training part may be used to train our machine learning selected model of machine learning, so that it can learn the attribute of the past data. And this again, once it has learned the attribute of the past data, then this test data that we have segregated randomly from the available data, that is used to test this design prototype test, to test this machine learning algorithm. And if the model perform better for the testing data, then we can say that yes, our prototype is working better for all possible kind of data. Now it can be deployed as a product where it should be able to classify or predict the unknown data. That's how we do it. There is a difference between experimentation and original working. So this training and testing part, division it is just only for simulation and prototyping and testing our model, and it should be able to perform better at par with the tested data. So whenever new data comes into the system, again it should be able to predict or classify the information. So this here you can see that machine learning algorithm is there, and grouping of objects, this classification problem or some predictive model or some annotation, etc. may be there. And this is how we can see the various. This diagram is very popular and it's available on internet. You can see, but it is very good diagram that gives you a very brief description of various machine learning algorithms, their possible applications. So machine learning, supervised, unsupervised. Again, these may be classification problem or regression problem. Some examples in classification problem: supervised classification, maybe identity fraud detection, image classification, customer retention, diagnostic problem. Or if it is a regression problem, then it is normally used in advertising, popularity prediction, weather forecasting, market forecasting, estimating life expectancy, population growth rates, etc. But whenever we have unlabeled data, where we do not have any information about the data, we are only available with some blind data, and we have to apply some mathematical measure to group that particular data, to group those similar data into the one each group. So here, that may be either dimensionality reduction problem or it is a clustering problem. So dimensionality reduction may be big data visualization, meaningful compression, structure discovery, feature elicitation, etc. Or if it is a clustering problem, classification leading to classing. Here they are used in recommender systems, targeted marketing, customer segmentation, etc. Nowadays, many other variants of the machine learning algorithm also. There is very reinforcement learning plays a very important role, and reinforcement learning and even deep learning approaches are there which are being used. So all these, even if you go to the deep learning based approaches, all of them use convex optimization method. You just take a simple paper of any deep learning approach, for example, CNN. Everybody knows the block diagram of the CNN. They know what every component do, how the feature pooling is done, how the feature mapping is done, how the classification is that, how many fully connected layers are there, etc. But that is a blank diagram. It's the black box. We need to understand, if you need to alter something, we need to tune that particular block diagram as per our need. then we have to go back to trace into this mathematics, actually how it's working. Then again, you will see various minimization problems and are associated there where loss is being minimized and etc. Then you can work on those particular optimization problem. You can learn that yes, these methodologies are being used here. This is the basic purpose of this particular cost functional. If I can change this cost functional in this form, then we can also change this particular simple classification problem into segmentation problem. Means even the same CNN can be modified, and which is primarily defined for classification can be modified even for restoration, even for segmentation, etc. But we need to think the problem in same manner. We need to find out some analogy. So here some features are there. Supervised learning uses training data with labels to learn a model of the data, and it uses the learned model to predict the test data. And normally two approaches are there. One is a generative approach. Some examples of generative approaches are name-based classifier, ANNs, principal component analysis followed by classification, etc. Discriminative models, very popular model is your support vector machines, which is based on the maximization problem, where we define the that's why it is also known as maximum margin classifier. Means this is simply a classifier, two class classifier, which can be extended as a n class classifier as well. So here some data is available to you, and you need to define a decision boundary, that is a hyperplane, and you need to put the data which are similar on one side and which are dissimilar on other side. Means if you want to segregate the data, then you need to find out the maximum margin between these two data. And based on that particular margin, a decision is taken whether the data is to be put on the left side of the boundary or right side of the boundary. Similarly, linear discriminant analysis is also based on decision function, where some Euclidean distance function may be there. Even non-linear discriminant analysis are there. Also, you can use radial basis functions and other functions, and you can design the various methods for dealing with those things. Nowadays, since these things are already available into the tool, and as a learner you start. But when you go for research purposes, then you need to understand the mathematics behind it, so that you can understand what kind of methodologies are being employed by these algorithms and how much they are useful. Whether I can do something so that it can be changed, or by simple change. And some limitations with supervised learning is that unavailability of labeled data for training the classifier. Means normally most of the time labeled data may not be there available due to many reasons. For example, labeling of data may be boring, or sometimes experts might not be available to mark the ground truth. For example, specifically in medical imaging, where there is always a limitation of availability of data. Even data is available, ground truth data is not available. If we do some experimentation, some task on the apply some technology onto the available data, and we need to just cross-check it, verify whether our classification is correct, whether our prediction is correct, then we need the ground truth data. Means it has ground truth data is a data where experts have already marked those regions with some captions. Those captions may be the name of the organ, some anomaly associated with, etc. So these limitations are there, and sometimes a number of topic categories may not be available in advance, or might increase with more data. Means you are maybe working on some data, and you may not be aware about some other kind of data that may come into the future. Those problems may be there. So solution is that if you are not available with the labeled data, you go for unsupervised learning. So many methods are there. Here, learner is provided only unlabeled data, and no feedback is provided from the environment. And aim of the learner is to find patterns in data which is otherwise observed as a unstructured noise. Commonly used unsupervised learning approaches normally include various clustering approaches and its variants. K-means methods, fuzzy C-means approaches, Gaussian mixture models, constraint clustering. Many methods are available, which all the goal of each and every method is to cluster that particular data. And again, for clustering information, again you define some cost function, and again that cost function has to be minimized or maximized. And again, there are limitations associated with this algorithm as well. Clusters generated by unsupervised learners might not adhere with real-world clustering, and real-world problems are often subjective in nature. And then we can ask a simple question: can a little bit of labeled data be used to guide an unsupervised learning? Can the learner incorporate user suggestions and feedback? Answer is yes. We can go for a hybrid approach if we have a mix of data. Some part of data is labeled and some part of data is unlabeled. And those category of algorithms are known as semi-supervised learning. And its many variants are available into the literature. And you may to supervised learning. At the same time, improving the results of unsupervised clustering. So here, that is the simple example. Here, between supervised learning approach and semi-supervised learning approach. Means in supervised learning, everything is fixed. Decision boundary is fixed, some optimization criteria is fixed, and you are having a labeled data. You can simply classify those data into large or small. But here, when you use the semi-supervised approach, you may have a mix of data, and here you have the also flexibility of moving these boundaries, decision boundaries, in various iterations until you fit the complete data. So that is the flexibility that is there. That's why semi-supervised learning are considered to perform much more better for mix of data which are available to us. And if you go into the literature, you can find out the many research papers related to this semi-supervised learning based approaches. And all of these are basically uses optimization techniques. The optimization is a core. It is simple mathematics. Without optimization, nothing. Whether you are interested in any kind of mathematical optimization method, you need to understand its property at first, whether it is applicable to this domain or not. Then you go ahead for that particular purpose. So many SSL techniques which are available into the literature include constraint clustering based approach, distance metric learning based approach, manifold based learning, sparsity based learning, that is also known as compressed sensing approach, and active learning. If you find research papers associated with each of these categories, you may find n number of papers. Basically, these methods have two cost functionals. One cost function maybe need to be maximized, another need to be minimized, associated with some coupling function and some coupling parameter, lambda, f1 plus lambda f2. f1 may be maximization, f2 may be minimization, and lambda has to be adjusted. It takes care of all these situations and problems. It is not simply a minimization problem or maximization problem and adding another smoothing function. It is not the case. Here, this kind of semi-supervised learning based approaches may have both kind of functions in one objective function that need to be solved carefully. Means you can define two parameters. One is minimization parameter and the maximization parameter. So which goal of both parameters should be same. Normally, for evaluation of these machine learning algorithms, many methodologies are there. We need to understand at first the confusion matrix, what is confusion matrix, and then many parameters: accuracy, error rate, precision, recall, specificity, true positive rate, true negative rate, balance classification rate, F measure, matrix correlation. Many methods are there just to evaluate your performance. ROC curve is one of the prominent methods to evaluate this algorithm, and area under this curve, AUC, is also one of the parameters that can be used to evaluate or benchmark the various methodologies. And then deep learning, basically with the increase in amount of data, and normally the methods which I have discussed earlier, supervised, semi-supervised, and nowadays they are called as a conventional machine learning based approaches, but still they are very much powerful for specific dedicated applications. But whenever you deal with the very big data and big data analysis, obviously you need to understand those architectures so that your method is not biased or not data dependent. Normally, it is said that the conventional machine learning approaches are data dependent. They perform as per their training, but training with the limited data. But here the property of deep learning based approaches is that it has an abundance of data, and it can learn each and every possible combination of the data, and derive each and every possible feature from that particular data, though it may need extra computational power, extra computational time, but it is available with all kind of features. That's why it is considered to be much more robust for working with the large amount of data. That's why we need to understand for what kind of application we need to work. If you plot a graph between the amount of data and performance of various machine learning algorithms, or suppose amount of data is on x-axis and performance of machine learning algorithm on y-axis, then if you plot the performance of these conventional machine learning approaches, whether it's supervised, unsupervised, or semi-supervised, their performance stagnates. Their performance may increase by tuning, changing every methodology up to certain level, but after certain level, with the increase in amount of data, their performance may stagnate. But the basic property of this deep learning based approaches that they do not work, they may not work for the limited amount of data, but they can perform much more better for large amount of data. Means as the amount of data increases, the performance of the conventional machine learning algorithm stagnates, whereas the performance of the deep learning algorithm increases. So this is a completely different approach to apply a problem. That's why, and now I will switch over to the application areas of IoT, computer vision, and machine learning. IoT applications and computer vision applications are found in many domains. For example, in medical and healthcare. IoT-enabled computer vision analytics, agriculture, security, and surveillance. Saliency in contextual or motion data and real-time video processing. Saliency helps algorithms decide what to process and where to process in a video. Saliency model is developed using clues from the human behavioral, motion, etc. And combining statistic algorithm with machine learning to enable correct object classification with the use of IoT. Using smart cameras connected to the cloud to drive real-time video analytics, and many other applications are there. Some use cases are available onto the website. You can go ahead and you can just see how you can find its applications of computer vision and AI and ML into these IoT devices, or you can come to the. So basically, the computer vision and analytics industry are moving towards designing a generic framework that solves all computer vision related problems for individual domains. And these are some specific block diagrams related with some applications of computer vision. For example, if automatic detection of diseases from images, various stages that may be involved in pre-processing, segmentation, feature extraction, feature selection, and classification. This is not only for detection of diseases. This kind of framework is very popular since last 20 years and can be employed in any kind of application where you want to classify the image data into various categories. Simple is the case. Only thing that varies depending upon the application is the nature of segmentation algorithm, nature of features, kind of feature that you are applying, etc. Only the methodology that is being employed, each and every method, every block may change depending upon the kind of application that you are working with. So here, this is simple flowchart showing the design of a computer-aided diagnostic system for cancer detection from mammograms using simple machine learning-based approaches. So here, first approach is that you need to pre-process the database of the images. So here you may require enhancement of the data or restoration of the data. Then again, you have to think of that what kind of data that you are available with. What is the source of data? If it is not clean data, then how you will do the cleaning? Because that is the image processing part, but it requires a lot of effort to produce that good quality of data that is being used by the further steps of this system. So here, if the data is clean but not noisy, but again you want to highlight those features which may be of your use, then you can use simple specific image enhancement algorithm that can highlight those features into the image, etc. Or if it is noisy in the nature, then again you have to consider, you have to see that you are available with this kind of image data, and then you have to see that what kind of noise it may have. It is not always the case that it is always the additive noise. Sometimes multiplicative noises may be there. For example, specifically in medical imaging, it becomes very essential to analyze that you are dealing with which kind of data. If the data is clean, then you need not to think about it. If the data is noisy, then again you have to work with this low-level mathematics, low-level higher-level mathematics and low-level features to extract those. If it is a additive data, then we can say it is a Gaussian distribution noise is having a Gaussian distribution, Gaussian pattern, Gaussian probability distribution function, and that can be simply casted. But if it is multiplicative in nature, for example, it is a Poisson noise. Poisson noise, for example, in the CT or PT images, ultrasound images, Rayleigh gamma distribution is there, or microscopic images, some kind of Poisson images may also be there. Even in your MRI images, noise is distributed using noise pattern is having a Rayleigh distribution pattern, Rayleigh distribution, probability distribution function. So all these are not additive in nature. Then you need to define an objective function that is a non-linear optimization problem, and you have to find out the likelihood, you have to find out the maximizing the likelihood, and then you have to cast your optimal optimization function in such a way so that you can design a suitable filter adapted towards a particular noise pattern. Additive noises only work if some noise is added externally. Suppose some it may be illumination, some external noise, or some other noise is added. Then in those cases, so we need to be very careful while dealing with the image or video data. We need to understand its source, from where, from which device it has been captured, and which kind of methodology may work. So sometimes whenever researcher report their work, they do a very simple mistake in reporting. Even in pre-processing, they understand, okay, the thing has to be done with. Simple approach is that you take clean data, you enhance it, and go ahead. Otherwise, if you are dealing with the noisy data, then you need to clearly identify and define which kind of methodology you are going to use, and you have to justify the mathematical model how it works with it. That is the image restoration. Similarly, once you are having a clean data, then segmentation part is there. You can apply any kind of segmentation approach to segment those objects. It may be thresholding based approach, it may be clustering based approach, it may be rough set based approach, it may be region based approach. Again, many methodologies are there that can be used. Then it comes to the hybrid feature selection, then feature selection for reducing the feature, then splitting of the selected feature into two parts, train part and test part. Train part can be used to train the classifier, and once it is learned, then test part that you already had can be used to test the classifier, and this classifier will tell that it is a category A image, category B image, for example, normal image, abnormal image. Then again, abnormal images can have various classification, whether it is a benign image or malignant image, etc. So again, where you have to think of the while you are dealing with machine learning algorithms, you have to think of carefully about this statistical approach for partitioning the data. Which methodology, whether you are using K-fold class validation, whether you are using random sampling based approach, whether you are using stratified sampling based approach, whether you are using leave one out based method, whether you are leave, all these are statistics. Only the basic idea is to partition the data into two parts, which remove the class imbalance, biases, etc. Means all these two parts should be balanced. Representative of every category of data should be present into the. It is not simply a case with 30% from starting into train part and 70% for test part. No, it has to be logically defined. And another application may be automated abnormality detection for capsule endoscopic images using a hybrid approach of conventional machine learning and deep learning. So here, this is simple diagram where conventional machine learning as well as deep learning approach both were applied. The basic reason was that the availability of data was limited. We had a very limited video clips of capsule endoscopy data for gastroenterology department, and we had some frames, and we need to analyze it. But still, we wanted to improve the performance. We wanted that the design model should not be data dependent, because we had a limited data. It has its property, and if we design a conventional machine learning approach, then it will behave in a similar. It behave good if we get a similar kind of image in future as well. Then it was just a simple approach was adapted. Very simple approach says that hybrid approach. One is we use the concept of transfer learning. We use a simple transfer learning approach. Means we have pre-trained deep neural network data, which were trained on the other data having similar property, and we finally added this data as well to train that particular data, and then this system was used to find the confidence of prediction. And we use that if confidence of prediction is 85% or suppose 90%, then we can classify, yes, we have a good confidence of prediction, and it can be classified, it can be treated as a output, and even for those kind of data where we obtained less confidence of prediction, then we use the conventional method of machine learning to classify that particular data. And here again we use the feature extraction of the available input data. Then we use the tenfold cross validation, and we use the ensemble classifier to produce. This output is coming from two streams, and that perform better for this similar kind of thing can be thought of without using a very high computational resource, etc. Another very good example is your automatic image captioning. It is also a very popular problem, which encompasses the applications of AI, computer vision, as well as natural language processing. So here, this simple diagram you can see. This system says that when you apply some methodology, the system may say that a cat sitting on top of a bed, because it is the simple thing that is completely can be observed clearly. But as a human being, I can say exactly that a person sitting on a bed behind an open laptop computer, and a cat sitting beside and looking at the laptop screen area. But this kind of intelligence machine cannot have. We need to understand how we need to apply the various methodologies. So here, as we can see, the system is perfectly correct, but the human uses his or her experience in the world to create a much more detailed caption. So this is automatic image captioning or scene description applications. They are used where we work on salient object detection, saliency segmentation, and then here let us see how this problem is perceived. If this problem is simply perceived, means as a suppose we have an image and we need to give a high level description, means what is happening in this scene. So simply it is a problem of computer vision and natural language processing. Computer vision problem involves here the automatic image captioning problem, means image annotation, means some kind of object classification. So if we go for object classification or object annotation, means providing some caption, means providing some class label to that particular object. Then here the object detection and annotation is the main part, and we can apply the various processes of computer vision framework to find out these annotations. So here that first these annotations obtained from this image may work as a detection of words. The various words may be woman, crowd, cat, camera, holding, purple. Then simply by using the simple natural language processing, grammar and language, there we may find out various possible combinations of sentences that can be generated from these words, and then we can re-rank these sentences in order of their importance. So here, if we see in second phase, we may find n number of sentences that can be found from these words, but after re-ranking these sentences, we can find out that at a number one, the prime sentence is a woman holding a camera in a crowd, means that is best describing this thing. That is best describing this thing, having a meaningful language. This is the example. And sometimes applications are also there, vision-based path navigation for autonomous vehicles. So here, if we see the working steps of any autonomous vehicle, so here basically it is a very interdisciplinary field. So here we can see where we can contribute. First one is your set of sensors, and which gathers the data, and then depending upon this data is fed into the perception and localization module, and then this perception module deals with the detection and localization, and next one is your planning module, and last one is your control module. So here this is the perception and planning module, where computer vision optimization techniques are heavily used for defining those actions. So here some examples of detection problem in perception module include lane detection, traffic light detection and classification, traffic sign detection and classification, object detection and tracking, multi-object tracking, free space detection, etc. And in planning part, with the help of this data, this is route planning, prediction, behavior planning, trajectory planning. These are the various problems. If you want to work in this particular domain, you have to need to identify. If you want to work as a complete solution, then you have to work a complete team and you have to work on each and every module. But you can think of that, yes, we can work on this particular problem. Depending upon the output of planning module, some control is transferred to the electromechanical devices to take the control of the battery. Then another very interesting application is your crowd management, where we find out the applications of computer vision heavily, with disciplined and intelligently applying acquired information and skills to control and direct crowds in presence of threat situations like crowd panic, stampede, riots, violence, crowd outbursts, etc. Goal is to optimize the chances of survival of human beings during emergency situations. So if we see the various components of a crowd management system, here input is your crowd scenes and output is your crowd management. The various components of the crowd management system include this crowd analysis. The crowd analysis includes crowd count and density estimation, crowd behavior analysis, whether the crowd behavior is normal, abnormal, crowd flow analysis, crowd congestion level analysis, crowd scene understanding. So these are basic modules. And for each module, various methodologies are there into the literature to find out that particular problem. So normally students may work on the crowd count and density estimation problem. Some of them may work crowd behavior analysis problem, because most of them are interlinked with each other. But if you need to work as a complete solution, that's a complete problem, then you need to address all these issues, whatever the methodology you are going to use. The first thing is that acquiring crowd information for crowd management. Here, we can acquire crowd information by properly analyzing the crowd through video surveillance data, and crowd analysis provides information related to crowd count or crowd density, crowd flow information such as dominant crowd motion direction, crowd congestion level, abnormal crowd behavior like panic, gathering, running, fighting, overcrowd, empty crowd, etc. So normally many technologies are there, the computer vision based approaches and non-computer vision approaches. Their comparison is shown, and obviously there are limitations of each and every method. So non-vision based approaches, it only provides crowd density information, but vision based approaches it not only provides crowd density information but also other crowd analysis related information. It cannot provide semantic crowd information, it can provide semantic meaningful crowd information. Here the limitation is that people or objects or vehicles should have a GPS device, which makes it practically impossible, and it is not required. So pros and cons are there for deployment of the technologies, and this is simple framework of this vision-based crowd management system. Means first one is your input and pre-processing module, another one is your learning module, third one is your crowd analysis, and third one is your last one is your management module. So here hello. Yeah, please proceed. I will join after some time. Huh? Yeah. I'm in another lecture. Huh? How many students are there? 5 groups. Okay, you proceed with you. I will join later. Huh? No problem. So this is the framework of any vision-based crowd management system. And again, you see that it conforms with the general computer vision framework. Again, frame tree processing, feature extraction. It may be other conventional learning or deep learning approach or learning algorithm. Then output may be related to this, any of these things. And the basic point to understand is that here, while dealing with these kind of applications, crowd management depends upon accurate crowd analysis, and crowd analysis is not a single task, rather than it is a group of several activities, but not limited to crowd count and density estimation, crowd behavior analysis, crowd congestion analysis, crowd flow analysis, and crowd scene understanding. So all these components actually encompasses the crowd analysis part. If we say in generic sense, I am dealing with the crowd management module on that, then you have to need to address all these things. And if you go into the literature, there are many approaches which are available into the literature. You can classify them accordingly: conventional machine learning approaches or deep learning based approaches. The conventional There may be classification of clustering approaches, like count by detection, regression-based approaches, density map estimation-based approaches are there. Again, or you can go ahead with these deep learning-based approaches. And many state-of-the-art approaches nowadays, since the data is very used, then people are concentrating on deep learning-based approaches. These are some examples of the crowd scene, how to classify that particular data. Novel scene, abnormal scene with a cyclist and four-wheeler, etc. So these were some applications, and my only motive was to just to discuss about some basic applications of the possible area where you can apply these tools and technologies. At first, we need to understand that on what problem we are working, what is the purpose of this particular problem, what kind of accuracy is required, and then what kind of resources are available to you, including data. Depending upon those constants, you can work towards formulating a better strategy for devising a solution. For academic research purposes, you may choose any method you can work, but when you go for product development, etc., you have to also examine its feasibility. These are some works that have been published by my students. So these papers are available, and if you are interested, you can just see and download. So with this, I am just ending this session because I have to join another meeting, and hope I was able to just discuss the basic things of computer vision and machine learning and its applications, and so on.
Participants may ask the questions if they have any.
I am texting my email ID as well. So if anyone is interested in discussing any specific problem, they may also email me rajiv.csc@iitvhu.ac.in. They want to discuss about any problem or any resource. So if I have information, definitely I can help you, or I can connect with my group members, those who are working on this similar problem.
I think there is no question.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rajiv ji.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so next session will be at 4 p.m. So we have a break now.